This is Leadership Beyond, your community of conversation.
Joining us today is Ryan Englin. Ryan is passionate about supporting growing businesses, particularly in blue-collar industries, to build amazingly productive companies by hiring the right people. Growing up, he saw his own father working 12-hour shifts and weekends as an owner-operator, witnessing firsthand the struggle that these companies have in hiring quality frontline employees. Ryan was determined to help them find a better way. His company, Core Matters, provides coaching and training on attracting, hiring, and retaining rock star employees. Using his proven process, the Core Fit hiring system, small and mid-sized businesses learn how to start hiring better people faster. With almost a decade in the business, Ryan has worked with over 100 clients, helping business owners achieve their goals by hiring the right people. Ryan's book, published in 2023, is called Hire Better People Faster, and you'll find out how to get your copy in the show notes. What I really like about Ryan is without his words, you can tell how passionate he is about people. And as those of you who are followers of Leadership Beyond, we know we want to see all business problems through a people lens. You're going to love our conversation with Ryan. So we say, welcome, Ryan Englin.
Welcome, Ryan. Thank you so much for joining our podcast. And we're excited to have you as our first guest for 2025.
Thank you for having me.
So to open us up, if you would just share a little bit about yourself, Core Matters, and what your passion is that led you to really focusing on the employee in businesses.
Of course. I grew up in a blue collar household. My dad was a minority partner in a business. And I remember spending time with my dad at the shop a lot when I was a kid. And like a lot of entrepreneurs, the business, for a long period of time, the business owns them before they own the business. And it wasn't until I was older that I realized that my dad was a great boss. He knew how to run the business. He knew how to do the work, but no one had ever taught him how to build a team of people he could trust. And so fast forward to my exploration into corporate and learning about process and strategic thinking, everything else, I start my own business. And at the time, I believed that my dad's problem wasn't that nobody taught him how to grow the business. I thought my dad's problem was he didn't have enough business. So I started a marketing company. And I went and I worked with service contractors, manufacturers, people just like my dad, thinking I can help them if we can get more revenue coming in. And about 3 years in, I had a bunch of clients call me and say, hey, stop the leads. I don't need any more revenue. What I need is people. They're like, but I don't know anybody that can help with that. And I was like, I had this realization that recruiting is no more than a marketing activity. I had a marketing background. So let me go see if we can get you some people. And it turns out that I was really good at it. It worked really well getting them candidates to interview. But then I found, well, if we don't teach them how to interview, they're never going to hire the right people. Yeah. If we don't teach them how to onboard, they're never going to keep the right people. If we don't teach them how to engage, they're never going to grow the right people. And so I set out to build our process, the Core Fit hiring system, wrote a book, and here we are.
Well, I want to stay with that comment just a little bit longer before we dive into the system. And you said recruiting isn't an HR activity, it's a marketing activity. What leads us astray if we think of it as an HR activity?
Well, I think we make a lot of interesting decisions in business. And before we get into HR, like the one that I've always blown my mind is that HR always reports up to finance. Because in a service business, what's your biggest expense? It's your people. So why wouldn't the CFO figure out how to run HR? And then we get to HR and we realize that human resources isn't about connecting with people and building relationships with people. It's about compliance. It's about regulation. It's about making sure that our people and our company are protected. It's a very much a compliance, logistical role. And we make this decision though, well, they're protecting our people, so why don't we just have them do all the people stuff? And they're not usually the most qualified for that. And so what we found was that when you want to attract people to your business, we first as an organization have to become attractive. Well, who does that? The marketing team. If you want to get in front of the right people, you have to first identify the right people, personas and employee profiles and all that. Well, who's used to doing that? The marketing team is used to doing that because they do it for your customers. And so on until we realize if we really want to attract people to be employees, it's no different than attracting people to be our clients.
Yeah.
Yeah. As obvious as that sounds, we're often missing that. And then it makes sense why, if you want to be attractive, you focus on vision and purpose and values, because then you're most likely to attract people who want to contribute to what you're about and be a part of what you're about. But that can also often be missing if we're just looking for someone who's competent, who can fill this role, and we got to get them in right away. And then you have repeat, repeat, repeat.
But that's what HR is good at, is taking a list of bullets of requirements, responsibilities, metrics, because it's very logical. They're really good at putting that list together and putting it up on the job boards, which is why every job ad on the planet pretty much looks exactly the same, because HR people are taking the list of bullets for that job title and they're putting it out there. But we all know that people don't leave jobs, they leave people. Mm-hmm. So if we want to attract good people to us who are on the job market, they're looking for better people to work for. They're not looking for another set of bullets on what they're going to do for a job. And marketing is really qualified to help you do that.
And you focus primarily more in the trades, is that right, with Core Matters? So what are the nuances that are specific to that industry, and what additional challenges do you find as it compared to corporate?
Yeah, so part of the reason I don't work with very large organizations is I don't do really good following rules. Right? Which is really a marketing thing. You know, marketers don't like to follow rules. They want to break them. And when you get too large, there ends up just being too much, oh, we can't do that because I got to get this group involved or that group involved. Yeah. And I don't have the patience to move slow. So I found if I want to move fast, I have to work with smaller organizations. But when it comes to the trades, there's just something about them that I'm drawn to, probably because they remind me of my dad and the time I got to spend with him. And I just feel at home there. I've had a lot of people tell me, oh, you should go work in the tech sector or in the healthcare sector because they're struggling too. And every time I get an opportunity to do that, I just don't have that same passion and drive that I do for the trades. Yeah. But I think one of the big things that's different about the trades that people don't realize is that we do not have a labor shortage in the trades. There's always on the news, oh, there's a labor shortage. There's 700,000 jobs that aren't being filled. But it's not a shortage. And here's how I know it's not a shortage, because every company I go to, I ask them, how many employees did you have on December 31, 2024 at the end of the year? And how many W-2s are you going to issue this year? And no one's ever told me, oh, I had 130 employees and I issued 130 W-2s. It's not even close. Usually it's something like, well, I had 130 employees and I issued 400 W-2s. I'm like, so we don't have a problem with people not wanting these jobs. The problem we have is people don't want to work in these jobs because they don't want to work for you.
Turnover. Yeah.
So there's not a labor shortage. There's a labor crisis. But that crisis is not because there aren't people to do the job. It's because we have a whole industry that has said, hey, you know what? You should be honored to work for me. Instead of the other way around, saying I should be honored that you want to be here. And so it's flipping that mindset, it's changing that narrative that we need to do if we're going to solve this problem for the trades.
And I think that would extend even into like the service industry, where it's a higher turnover industry, right? So the importance on attracting the right fit employee, and then nurturing and treating that employee well in a way that matches with how they would like to be treated, right? Not how I want to be treated, right? That platinum rule.
Yeah.
And so what plays into that correct selection and then the retention, that from onboarding on to reduce that, the goal to be reduce the turnover, right?
I think one of the things that most people in the service sector have missed is that we are hiring a human being. And when we hire a human being, we get the whole person, whether we like it or not.
Head,
'Cause
heart, and briefcase.
I can't tell you how many times I've heard somebody say, oh, they need to leave their drama at home. Well, then they should just stay home, right? They shouldn't be working for you. But a lot of leaders have that mentality of, oh, I don't care that you have childcare issues. I don't care that your kid's sick. You need to be in the office. They very much have that mindset of, oh, you got to take a kid to the doctor and you booked this 3 months ago and you forgot to ask for a day off. That's not my problem. That's your problem. When you hire somebody, you get the whole thing, the whole enchilada, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything in between. And I think that in the service sector, we've forgotten that. We've thought of our employees as a set of hands, or a worker, or a laborer, or someone who just needs to stand behind a machine all day, or they just clean hotel rooms all day, or whatever. We haven't thought of them as a human being who isn't here because that's what they were made to do. They're here because it's a means to an end for what they want personally. And when we make that shift, I mean, it can open up so many possibilities.
I was really struck by the idea in your book about everybody is part of recruiting. You could outsource recruiting and they may do a very good job, but I love the idea of the 360 marketing plan. Talk a little bit about how your network, whatever your role is, can become a source for finding like-hearted people that may have the skills you need.
Yeah. So what I found, you mentioned earlier, talking about values and vision and this, what we call the employer brand. It's really what defines the organization. A lot of people call it culture. I think culture is one component of that. And when we understand what it is that's important to us as leaders, as owners, we typically, I think it's human nature, we surround ourselves with people like us. That's what we want. We keep people close to us who think like us and behave like us. And it's one of those things that when we recognize it, it can be a very powerful realization. And what we've found is that the most effective way to get more great people on your team is to go to your great people and ask for their help. Because the reality is, when your office manager goes home at the end of the day and talks about how amazing it is to work at your company, they're marketing. It's word of mouth marketing. That's what that is. They are a walking, talking billboard. But when that same office manager goes home and tells their friends about how awful it is to work there, they're
also
still
a walking, talking billboard.
They're still a walking,
Good
talking
news travels
billboard.
fast, but bad news travels so much faster.
Yeah. And so we do a lot to prevent the bad news, but we don't do anything. We're never intentional about helping spread the good news. I also find this with your customers. I find this with your strategic partners. If you think about the people that are important to you, your CPA, your attorney, your banker, your suppliers, when you think about those people, you're probably with that one because there are things about them that are more than they just gave you the best price. You probably, most likely, have some level of values alignment with them. You behave the same way, you think the same way. That's why they're in your circle of influence. So if I need someone to join my team, why wouldn't I go to the people who already think like me and behave like me and value what I value and say, who do you know? And that's what that 360 marketing plan is identifying those unique opportunities, those channels, and becoming very intentional about marketing into them. Because how often do we miss opportunities by not going to the people that we already have relationships with and help them recruit people for us?
And they need to be, some would do it automatically, even if you weren't in there, but it needs to create a mindset and a habit and have some education, which was clear in your book, to educate them on how to do it because they don't just know to do it.
Well, if you look at your people, so many people have employee referral programs, and we go to our craft workers, we go to our machine operators, we go to our customer service reps, and we say, "Hey, can you go recruit for us? Can you find employees, other people to come work here?" They don't know how to do this.
They don't.
It's not their
Mhm.
job. And
Mhm.
most likely, when they're done for the day, they're not thinking about you anymore. They're thinking about their family and the dinner and the kids' homework and all the other life things that happen. So if we want them to be really good recruiting partners for us, we have to equip them with tools. We have to be very intentional about reminding them. And we have to support them when they get stuck.
Yeah.
Well, it's clear that you have a holistic approach. So talk a little bit, you're a process and you're leading to automation. Talk a little bit about how that unfolds.
Yeah.
The client.
So when someone starts looking at solving their people problems, and that's where we start. This is a people problem. The first thing we have to do is look at ourselves, right? Because if people aren't attracted to the business, or if people aren't staying in the business, it's most likely a leadership issue. So the first question we have to ask and we have to answer correctly is, if I was applying, would I want to work here? Would I want to work for the business I created? And it's amazing how many times people have realized, you know what, there are a lot of things that are missing. Like if I was not the owner, if I was not the leader, I probably wouldn't want to work here either. So we first have to do some internal reflection and identify what are the opportunities from a process perspective, from a marketing perspective, from a authenticity and expectations perspective. I find that a lot of times, if we aren't doing really well at finding or keeping people, it's usually because we don't know how to communicate with them what it is that we expect, what we want, what is a good employee and what is not a good employee. And if we don't know how to communicate it, it's probably because we're not clear on it first.
Right. I was going to offer that. Like, well, have you defined it?
Yeah.
Those are
So,
my first questions, right? Have you defined what good looks like?
so we have a
Yeah.
process, we call it the core fit profile. And it is the first step in identifying the right person for your team, the person that I would dub a core fit. Right? A lot of what we talk about is the core of your business. And it really is so important that you identify the people that align to your core, your brand, that when they come in, it's like, it feels like they're home, right? It feels like, where's
Mhm.
this person been my whole life? And we sit down and we have a brainstorming activity we do called the core fit profile, where they look at 7 different factors to identify the right people. And that's step 1. And then you had mentioned, Tom, the automation. I find, especially in the small, medium business world, everybody's got too many hats they're wearing. They're all too busy. So we implement a CRM, or an applicant tracking system, to help with this. And it automates a lot of the follow-up and the chasing and the scheduling and everything else that we're so used to doing by hand. And when we get really clear on the right people and we get really good on a process that is automated, amazing things can happen.
And the flip side, which you've already alluded to, if you automate before you have clarity, you get a mess.
You get a
Because
lot more
everybody
of what you
wants
don't want.
technology. Technology was one of the 3 you mentioned, delegation and process. But if we don't have clarity and we don't have a process, yes, the technology can do it fast,
Yeah.
but then you get a faster mess.
Yeah.
So the order, the sequence matters tremendously. Are we clear what we're trying to do, who we are, how we can talk about what we do, and then automate?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then once we have those people coming in, being really clear and making sure everybody understands, how do we assess the right people? I like to say this. So a lot of our training is putting things in perspective for people. So we talk a lot about normal relationships, romantic relationships, familial relationships when we talk about recruiting and hiring. And it blows my mind that people think a good interview is 15 minutes, 30 minutes. They're like, oh, I know everything I need to know about that person. Yet when I say, okay, you're essentially asking this person to move in with you, is what you're doing. You're trusting them with your baby, and you think a 30-minute interview is enough. Like, how long would you date someone before you say, let's get married, before you're confident it would work out? Now, I'm not saying spend 6 months interviewing somebody, but I promise you 30 minutes is not long enough to really get to know someone. And it's one of the reasons that we talked about earlier is the pre-hire assessments, those behavioral assessments, and being able to really streamline and fast track getting to know somebody and who they are. And so we like to implement those sorts of tools as well, because the more confident you are that this person aligns to who you're looking for, the better it's going to be long term.
Yeah. What we have found be really powerful is being able to systematically line up what's the profile of a job from a behavioral perspective and line that up with the profile of an individual, right? And see, and again, we talked about this. That's one piece of information, right? That's not the 60-minute, couple hour conversation.
It's not a substitute.
It's not a substitute, but it really highlights there are natural drives. People, right, are driven to have an environment, a work environment, a certain way, to do certain kind of work in a certain way. And if that doesn't line up with the work to be done, it's a stretch, right? And you can find that very quickly with some of these assessment tools. And I think the other important piece is we've talked a lot about like the strengths, but there's also leaning into your strengths could be different, are likely different from another individual, and it's putting those strengths together in the right way, right, to build a powerful team.
Yeah.
Say more about that.
One of the reasons I like the assessments up front. Now, it's for me, this is my opinion. Do not assess anyone unless you've assessed yourself first and you know who you are. Because what do? What's human nature? We like to surround ourselves with people like us. We already talked about that. Well, guess what? I'm probably going to hire someone like me. And then the role that they were filling was a role I didn't want to do, which is why I wasn't doing it. And so we hire someone like me to do a role that they're not going to like either. And so what I like about the assessments is when you benchmark the role like you're talking about and say, what's the right behavioral profile for that role? And then you bring that person in, looking at that assessment or that report and saying, you know what? This is why I didn't hit it off with this person right away, because we're not like each other. But that's
that could be a good thing.
It doesn't mean they're not right for the role. Yeah.
And so it really can open their eyes. And what I love about the assessments and the reports is it's not me saying it. It's not subjective. This is your answers to questions that were asked of you. And this is the report that your answers led to. So if you don't like it, can't help you with that. And so it removes the subjectivity in finding the right people, which is why I love those tools.
Well, you started out and everything is about communication, but when you talked about these short interviews, you sometimes have 4 different people who have interviewed someone with short interviews, and it's clear that the 4 people never talk to each other. They go, oh, well, I really like what you're about. You ought to go talk to Adrian. And they go talk to Adrian, and it becomes clear that there's no alignment. And it seems like your process and system make sure everybody can see what the compass is before they're talking to an applicant.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I like the process we take people through is the core fit profile. That's your opportunity for all of you to vote on what you want and what you don't want. And once we agree on that, we're done. Then we're going to write a job description. We're going to write a job ad. We're going to develop screening questions and interview questions and onboarding process, because we all thought about what we wanted up front. And when we're really clear on that, our process is you have one person in the organization that does all of your screening. You have one person that does all of your culture assessments to make sure they're the right fit culturally. And then the hiring manager does the position interview. And so they're the ones that are actually managing their performance, making sure they can do the work. You don't need to have the same person interview all these different things. Let's put subject matter experts in to interview at the different stages of the interview process so we make sure we get really good people, because we all agreed up front what we're looking for.
Yeah. And that's really smart to bring in the hiring manager. And so often I see the hiring managers like at the very end, but yet that is the exact person that needs to be able to have that synergy and that strong relationship with that potential employee, right? Because now you get into onboarding, which I've seen in organizations is just a ping pong ball between HR and the lines of business and technology, right? Nobody wants to own onboarding. And
I've got some horror stories from my corporate days of onboarding that
yep.
really resonate with SMBs too. So
Yep, they sure do. Oh, sometimes especially with
it's
the
often
onboarding.
a one size fits all process.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not going to work, but only 100% of the time.
yeah, we've identified really like a half a dozen or so different types, like mindsets around onboarding. And, you know, some of my favorite are the, who are you? Like the who are you onboarding? Like you walk up, you're like, I'm here for your first day of job and nobody knows who you are. Right? But how often does that happen? Because we got busy or we forgot, or they get there and there's this little celebration. Hey, they're here, but oh, we didn't get your login set up. HR didn't finish processing your paperwork.
Your computer's not ready. Yep.
Oh my gosh. Like if we're hiring people, I like to call them rock stars. If you're hiring A players or rock stars, guess what? These people want to play for a team that has their act together. And if you don't have your act together, they're going to see it and they're going to say, you know what? I'm going to keep looking.
Yep.
It takes 10 weeks on average for someone to find a new job. So if you lose someone in the first 90 days, they never stopped looking, which means your onboarding needs a serious checkup.
Are you going to tell me, Tom, I got time for one more question?
How did you know that?
I was looking at the clock.
I don't go silent. I don't do the strategic pauses. Yeah, I look at the clock and I'm always saying, oh, we have so much more to ask, but we really only have about 5 minutes. So you're up, Adrian.
Well, I guess I'll ask with a nice, as we open, a nice broad question. So that way, Ryan, you can take it anywhere you want. But what is next for Core Matters? What's on the 2025 vision board for you?
Yeah, so it's interesting. We just finished annual planning a couple weeks ago and saying, what do we got to do in 2025? And we're seeing a shift in the way that business coaches and consultants work. And I'm finding that a lot of people are really leaning more towards the hands-on approach. For too long, coaches and trainers have come in and said, here's the stuff, good luck. And what they really need is to understand these people aren't experts. And so how do we do it for them? And so we're making a big shift. We have been for the last 6 months, but we're being very intentional now about really focusing on being a partner inside the business and making sure that we're managing the things that we know how to manage and not so much worrying about putting it back on the leadership team, because that's not their expertise. If it was, they wouldn't need us. We are also really focused on keeping things simple. It's really easy for us to enter this cycle of over engineering things because we want to be different or have a different way of positioning ourselves. And really, it just comes down to very simple things. And so we're really looking at keeping things much more simple and giving people a game plan where they actually go, whoa, I know where I'm at in the progress here, which again, I mean, we were victims of it. We over-engineered our game plan and people are like, I don't even know where I'm at in your program. And so we're really looking at how do we make this thing so simple that anybody can figure out where they are. And we're there to support them every step of the way, not just coach them on what they need to do. So those are the big things for us right now. It's just going to be a year of really making sure we bring a ton of value to our clients, because as recruiting gets a little easier, as there's a little bit more activity in the job market, there are other things that I think employers need to focus on instead of just recruit. Let's focus on retaining people and really helping them perform so that you get a greater return on your investment when you invest in your people. Right. That's a big focus for us.
I love that. What a great way to wrap. I think, that's simplicity. With the world moves too fast. We're all too busy. We don't need complicated systems. Right. And I think a lot of where I have seen so many things fall down is when the consultants leave, right? Because you're right. They don't have the tools. And there's a shift that I'm seeing in more cohorts or communities where you have sort of that outside coach that kind of checks in once in a while to make sure that accountability is still there. And you've got a sounding board when you need, to phone a friend.
Yeah.
So love it.
And that was a big shift for us last year. We started accountability groups, and I never thought they would be as popular as they are. But people are like, I'm going to be there. I'm not missing it. And there are
I know I
sometimes
need it. So
I just
probably
sit
lots of
back
other
and I
people
was
do
like,
too, right?
yeah, you guys go. So no, it's been good. I love what I do. I love serving the people we serve and seeing them get the results. And so
Yeah.
that's what keeps us going.
And it shows in the book and in person that
Thank
you're
you.
passionate
Yes.
about what you do and that providing value is core to you. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership Beyond podcast. We hope you benefited from this conversation as much as we have. We invite you to join our community of conversation. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to sign up at aleadershipbeyond.com for free materials and updates. That's aleadershipbeyond.com. Join us in 2 weeks for our next episode.